Armored Core 6: Fires of Rubicon is the latest installment in a long line of Armored Core games. Initially, the series launched back in 1997 on the first iteration of the PlayStation home console. Since then, it has received something like 16 different sequels and spin-offs, the last being Verdict Day in 2013. Now that's a lot of Armored Cores. So, these games were made by From Software. The last 10 years or so, you've probably heard about them a lot, considering the major success of their Dark Souls series. This led to a 10-year gap between Armored Core games, and the latest and focus of this video being 2013's Fires of Rubicon. Thankfully, the series hadn't been abandoned in favor of the Souls-likes, and From Software didn't seem to lose their touch, as 6 turned out to be not only a great and highly praised game, but the highest selling in the Armored Core series overall. It did get nominated for several different awards, managing to take home winning places for the Best Action Game at the 2013 Game Awards, as well as the Award of Excellence at 2024's Japan Game Awards. Generally, Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon is ubiquitously touted as one of the best mech games ever made, and I gotta say, that's an agreeable viewpoint to have. It really nails the Eastern-style mecha, high-speed roller skating with a beam saber, customizable loadout, mass explosive action thingy amazingly. But that's something that makes it maybe a little hard to review. I'd really like to make sure this video isn't just, "This game is great," spoken with different words for 15 minutes. Anyways, for those of you who don't know, hi, I'm Empty, I'm something of a Mecha Noob, and I discovered that I really like big robots. I've also decided that I want to play every mech game ever, and now I'm using this channel to document my thoughts, feelings, and opinions, and showcase various games within the genre as I delve into it. If you'd like to keep up with my work, hit the sub button. Now back to the game.
We're close to Rubicon. Wake the dog up.
In recent years, FromSoft has become relatively renowned for their esoteric and environmental storytelling techniques. While Fires of Rubicon still maintains this to a certain extent, the overall plot is a lot more front and center. Most of the story is told through fully voiced radio transmissions between key characters and sometimes even animated cutscenes. The first cinematic begins with our player character, C4621, as he's gruffly dropped out of orbit onto the planet Rubicon 3 by our handler, Walter. It's apparent we aren't supposed to be there, as our drop pod is almost immediately assaulted by the space cannon system of the Planetary Closure Administration, or PCA. It also appears 621 is an augmented human, functioning as some sort of slave mercenary to the highest bidder. Your humanity has been stripped over debts, and instead of a name, you've been given a number. Or, as Walter refers to you, a dog. Before making our crash landing, we are given a brief world setup. Rubicon 3 is a planet somewhere on the fringes of civilized space. In the past, a resource called coral was discovered here, which seemed to mean a mass technological advancement for humanity due to its energy, resource, and data conduit capabilities. This turned Rubicon into something of a Wild West gold rush before we flew too close to the sun, almost literally. Something goes wrong and triggers a solar system-wide toxic contamination mega nuke event called the Fires of Ibis. The hubris of man seemingly is undeterred, for as soon as the fires cease, exploitation returns to Rubicon 3, seeking coral. This anecdote ends as the actual gameplay begins, first order of business being subterfuge to steal the identification of a missing but illegally registered mercenary.
If we get our hands on Rubicon's coral, we'll make a killing. Plenty for a merc with a fried brain like you to buy their life back.
Following through this masquerade gives us the name of a raven. 621, Raven, Walter's Hound, that's all us. Now, this assumed identity of Raven allows us to connect to the All-Mind. This is a mercenary-wide artificial intelligence logistical support system. It allows interaction with goods and services like merc contracts, parts shops, and virtual reality combat simulators, etc. Now, from here, to avoid spoilers, I'll go ahead and stop the story recap, but first I'll introduce a few of the key factions. Do keep in mind, this is a game with multiple story endings, a story with multiple factions, mega corporate groups, arms manufacturers, freedom fighters, mercenary clans, research institutes, and governmental bodies, all vying to be the multiple choice option that you pick. I won't go over all of them in detail, but let's knock out a couple of the most important ones. Of course, we've got the Allmind and Handler Walters group as previously introduced, but also the PCA that initially tries to blast us out of space. This is the Planetary Closure Administration, a governmental body focused on, as its namesake, permanently closing the planet to negate a potential second Fires of Ibis type scenario. Think of them like the Space Police or maybe Border Control. They're the big boys, with big firepower and some crazy autonomous tech. I don't think they get along with anybody here, especially not the RLF. The Rubicon Liberation Front is a group made of natives and Fire's surviving colonists seeking out the freedom of Rubicon 3 from not only the PCA, but the corporations as well. They take personal titles after fingers and view coral as a religious entity more so than a commodity. Finally, the two munitions megacorps and their subsidiaries, who work under the motive of controlling the sector for profitability of coral extraction. Archivist Corp, named after the 15th century long gun, who employs the Vespers mercenary group, and Balaam Industries, likely named after the demon in the 17th century Lemegeton Clavicula Salomonis occult text, who employs the boisterous red guns. As far as I've played, Fires of Rubicon takes the cake for the speedy, action, mecha-type gameplay. Really the current tippy-top peaking point of this gameplay style, I feel. It feels grounded, yet flashy. There's tons of customization, but it doesn't end up feeling over the top. The fights feel challenging, but not impossibly hard. It's a joy to play, from the biggest boss battles to the tiniest of movements. Okay, so it's broken down into 5 chapters. I said before, there is a little bit of branching story paths. I think the first time playthrough is 42 missions with a total playtime of just under 20 hours. After that, it does unlock a New Game Plus mode with additional missions, and after that, another New Game Plus mode with even more. To 100% the game, we're looking at something like 59 missions with the total game time of, I don't know, like 60 hours then? I personally only did the initial playthrough. Some of you might find this sacrilegious, but I like to keep the post-game additional contents available for future playthroughs in games when I get the itch to come back. There was a time I was that 100% completion guy, but I think at this point that ship has sailed for me. Throughout these mini story-driven missions, typically you'll be blasting around different environments, largely various assortments of future tech megastructures and cold cityscapes. Sometimes deep underground caves or city ships half sunken over mirrored waters, and sometimes you'll even be in outer space. My personal favorite mission being Destroy the Weaponized Mining Ship, as it really set the scale for a wow factor. It takes place in some sandy dunes and feels a bit like an ultra-sized Monster Hunter mission or something. The stage itself becomes the boss fight as you're attacking a giant, and I mean very big, walking machine, step by step dismantling this metal beast as you climb all of its limbs to the top. Totally cool. For the most part, these levels have a similar structure. You'll bounce around the environment, dispatching the small guys until some sort of boss fight. These battles are more centerpiece. Sometimes you'll get to be the small guy here, defending against a larger machine, such as the battle against the flaming EC-0804 Smart Cleaner during the Infiltrate Grid 086 assignment. These bigger battles sometimes even employ companion members on your team. Alternatively, you'll be swept into tight dogfights with enemy armor core units. If that is your fancy, is also the arena. The arena is a virtual simulation on all mine for mercenaries to have one-on-one battles, its main reward being OST chips, which are used to unlock additional customizations for your armored core. Different damage boosts or mitigations, additional features like boost kick. Additionally, while I'm not much for multiplayer, there is a sort of multiplayer player versus player online arena mode. There's a choice of 1v1 or team matches and a ranking system in place. I don't have much to say about this because I didn't play it, but it's there. Alternatively to customizations present via OS tuning, the shop allows full part and weapon replacements. Legs, chest, head, arms, hand weapons, shoulder weapons, you name it. There's a lot of build diversity here, and I've seen a lot of crazy, cool, and silly stuff online where people have taken significant liberations to the paint tool function. Everything from grounded color palettes to replications of their favorite Gundams, to bringing Homer Simpson or Ronald McDonald into the fries of Rubicon. As far as the gameplay builds, most people seem to settle into a variety of light, medium, heavy, or aerial, based on the core itself. These can be ranged or melee builds with various damage types like kinetic, laser, or explosives. There's a lot to consider in builds down to things like energy capacity and weight control. My personal favorite was playing a heavy with a DFGA-08 Hubin full automatic Gatling gun in each hand. And when 2 wasn't enough, I mounted 2 more on my shoulders. And let me tell you, flying with these felt like chewing 5 gum.
How it feels to chew 5 gum.
This game sometimes gets plopped down as a difficult, hard, and challenging experience. I can't really say I agree as much as this is a reputation garnered by the overall output of FromSoft rather than specific to AC6. Of course, boss fights present a difficulty spike. By and large, the key to solving this lies more in assessing and refitting your build than getting good and replaying the same fight to learn its intricacies and patterns, which seems to be the mindset a lot of players retain after Dark Souls. Granted, I'm sure the difficulty also comes stronger in New Game Plus and New Game Plus, and admittedly I was not pushing missions to maintain S-rank completion in all of them. All things considered, my experience was enjoyable throughout, and while there were some instances of failure at the hands of various bosses, it was never in the realm of, this game's too difficult, I can't do this, and I always felt that I completed it reasonably. Within the visual space, AC6 sits above a lot of other titles, or at least in maybe a different camp. What I mean by this is that it goes for a realism art style, but is combined with the Eastern style of mech gameplay. Typically, from my observations thus far, this would lead to something of a cartoony or low-poly inspired visual set, rather than this gritty realism one we're presented with. So not only does it go for a realistic style, but it has a budget to back it up, which means things look pretty awesome. Something to note, a lot of the world is designed around dystopian science fiction megastructures. At a certain point, there's only so much you can do with evil buildings like this, but the sprawling cities of graying manufactured automation are seemingly sublet by background skyboxes excessively combusting with the beauty of life. This is a stark juxtaposition I deem metaphorically silhouetting humanity's minuscule nihilism in the face of the natural universe.
You're losing them, 621. Use smaller words.
Okay. It's pretty. The game is really grim, but really pretty to look at. Pretty grim. Especially the armored core when you equip the backwards chicken legs. The audio space of the game is something that really helps set the undertone. Everything from the depth of the footsteps to industrialized clanking, the gunfire laden with beeps and boops of warnings of targetings and overheatings, and everything is so crisp and crunchy and really makes my brainstem tingle, especially the out of energy sound. It's been a bit since I've been in an airplane, but I swear it's the same dinging sound airplanes used in the late 90s for buckle up.
That's where you're landing.
The soundtrack only exists to enhance the lonely, cold atmosphere. It's varied with notes evocative of desolate, too nostalgic side of the 80s pop synths to modern energy-driven heavy metal, though by and large overall a theme of brain-itchingly biomechanical ambience. For some, this might come as a low point. While personally I'm not extremely well versed within the franchise, I have put on various soundtrack compilations, and at my Mecha Noob observation, it seems that perhaps previous Armored Core titles had an original soundtrack with more oomph in terms of being memorable and standout-ish. Not to say Fires of Rubicon's soundtrack is bad by any means, but that it is more of an exceptionally fitting background whirring as means of enhancement to the game itself rather than something to seek out on vinyl to bop to at a late-night party. On the other hand, my thoughts on it as something of an audiophile with what others only describe as weirdo tastes in sound, I really dig the soundtrack. A good example being the Garage theme. It has an overall feeling that musically I feel explains the destitute reality of the situation the world presented with minimal instrumentations that bring notes of hope that only echo out to what sounds a melancholy hall. Another personal favorite being the briefing theme that shadows dialogue sequences to set the plot before and after missions. It gives a sort of electric mech heartbeat to really make you feel like you're in the pilot seat getting comms chatter, and is a great undertone for the voice work.
Got a job for you, 621. This is an open call from the Balaam Group, one of the corporate forces occupying Rubicon.
Attention, all independent mercenaries! This request comes from our affiliate, Dafeng. The Rubicon Liberation Front has deployed Baus artillery throughout the contaminated city. The city itself has no strategic value, but we cannot allow them to hinder expansion of the Coral Survey. Show us your ambition. Destroy the Liberation Front's artillery. Bonus pay will be awarded for destroying their MTs. We want the enemy weakened.
And the voice work itself I feel was really well done. These are completely faceless characters who we only interact with through these voice calls, and yet every single one of them pulls strong personalities and really feel like real people, which only makes killing them off during the branching story options harder choices. I feel for so many of these characters just based on the identities cultivated by vocal sound. There doesn't seem to be a lot of problems on the technical side of this game, though I will say it did crash on me a time or two. I'm playing the PC version, which maybe makes a difference. Another thing that I've read as specific to PC version is that the lock targeting is kinda busted. I haven't played the game on controller, only mouse and keyboard, and I noticed that the enemy lock was basically useless, as moving the mouse to aim auto-breaks the lock. Now when you play mouse and keyboard, it's very hard not to make micro movements with the mouse during some high-stakes boss fights while clicking the mouse buttons to shoot. This breaks the targeting and can be frustrating. I've read some users enable the targeting and then hold the mouse upside down completely to circumvent this even. Overall, I still managed to play the game to credit scroll, however, I can definitely see how this would make certain fights significantly easier if it was a non-issue. A potential criticism with the game design is that sometimes seemingly fun factor has outweighed game balance. While I'm okay with this in context that it triggers happy, overpowered power fantasy in my smooth brain, I can see how this is potentially a massive oversight to someone wanting a more tactical experience or perhaps is into the online player versus player scene. What I mean is potentially cheesing every fight with exploitative feeling staggers. Another similar design choice is that, especially when compared to the popular Souls titles from Soft, the combat itself is much less thoughtful. Souls games seem to reward thoughtfulness, careful and tactical learning of enemy attacks and movements, while Fires of Rubicon tends to reward haphazard, all-hands-on-deck throwing of every bullet, laser, missile, and explosion at the fastest pace possible. But that's what makes it fun for me. Another thing that is an oversight within the realm of storytelling, through gaming as a whole, less specific to this game in particular, is that it does the standard thing, where while in-game play combat scenarios, you'll get lore dumps through dialogue, which makes it very hard to pay attention to. I would love to be able to focus on what Air or Walter is telling me through radio messages, but I'm too focused on not getting blown up to fully bullet point the messages pertinent to story into my brain. However, I'm not sure there is a better way to do this without dropping the video game portion of the medium, actually. So this is kind of a non-complaint, I guess. Now, let me just wax poetically about the genre as a whole for a minute here. I'm sure this next passage will generate angry comments, but bear with me for a moment. Is Armored Core an amazing and mandatory mech game experience? Yes, absolutely. Is it the best mech game ever? Possibly no, because it is lacking something in this wider regard. Something that I've observed hasn't really been handled through video games, or at least done super well yet. Mostly this seems to be designated through animes, and that is the human element. Fires of Rubicon has virtually no showcase of the relationship of connection and comparisons of man to mecha. There are no on-foot sections, the pilots themselves might as well just be their mech suit, and the scale of the world is sometimes lost because of this. This is a world mankind lived and did things in, nor is this a miniaturized theme park set piece. Are these really human beings in giant armor ensembles? Are these robots? Are these something else? Final thoughts. Armored Core 6, Fires of Rubicon is truly a modern peaking point for the high-speed, action-oriented mech game market. It offers up a multitude-ending storyline with large amounts of gameplay customizability through various Armored Core build options. A must-play for mecha fans with gorgeous to gritty graphical fidelity, a harsh but meditative soundtrack, high-quality voice acting, and multi-form replayability, all bundled together into 60 gigabytes of hard drive space. Once again, From Software has hit it out of the park with an explosively polished product that really deserves its seat in the throne room of greatest games of all time.